Nico, knee. I'm sorry, it immediately came to my it came to my mind when I heard that. Nico knee, Nico knee, Nico knee. Anyways, episode 6 of Trigun Stampede was pretty darn hype. I actually really enjoyed this episode, and I will admit that there's a little bit of frustration that I have in the idea that it's not really doing well to establish what is really conflicting in Nicholas's mind right now, even though it is establishing a conflict with him. He's pretty much facing like 4 different forces, and he's got to decide really between 2. But it hasn't really done well enough to establish why Nicholas would have that frustration between Livio and Vash. There's obviously a break here. Just why is there a break? Nicholas is supposed to be following Vash. We at least got a sense that he's supposed to be monitoring Vash. It's not that he's necessarily going to have to kill Vash, but he is monitoring him. But why is that conflict there, and why is it established? Because technically, Livio is from the same group as him, so why is there a conflict here? Why are they creating that conflict? Except to break him, I guess, is the only thing you can really kind of draw a conclusion. Because I'm sort of getting ahead of myself. I didn't cover episode 5 because, honestly, I was a little bit disappointed, and the only thing I really had to say about episode 5 was negative. Well, I did have something positive to say. I think they really nailed that dread. It was a very dark episode, and they nailed that kind of setup. Now, I will admit that the reason why I was going to be negative on it is because it sort of ruined itself. Like, we already pre-established that Vash has been around for a long time. I think if we didn't establish that Vash has been around since, like, the moment that they arrived on this planet, like, the moment that humans arrived on this planet, Vash was there. We've already established that. So the idea of now presenting a twist in the idea that, oh, these 2 stories are actually different timelines. This is a 20-year gap right here between the story of this child that Vash knew and the story now. Since we already know that Vash has been around for a long time, the impact's gone. Like, we already know this is going to be the thing. So the moment that Meryl figures it out, it's like, well, I guess we established that she figured it out, but we already knew that. So I think it is sort of a missed opportunity. I think if episode 5 was the first episode, just jump straight into it and then jump back with the episode 2, the moment that he meets Meryl, I think that would have been a lot more impactful. We would, at least those that don't know the story, would have been surprised by it. But since we all know the story, there's no impact there. But anyway, that was my thoughts on 5. It was really well laid out. I just think its placement in the storyline and how they presented it so far was kind of a missed opportunity. But like I said, episode 6, really solid. I don't remember the presence of this big, huge craft that was going through this entire sea area in the original Trigun. I do know that Livio and stuff is characters that are in Maximum, so the other manga. So we're kind of continuing to kind of pull a lot of that story from Maximum into this one, which is really cool. But most of this episode was really centered around Nicholas and kind of establishing his backstory, which, again, I think was pretty solidly portrayed. I don't even remember the fact that he was, like, literally a child. Like, Nicholas right now is pretty much implied as being a child. He hasn't been around for that long, or at least when the drugs were placed into him, his body, his genes were kind of being restructured, and he's seen like a massive growth. Because you see it when Livio comes in, he's still a child, and Nicholas is now an adult, physically. Now, obviously not probably mentally, so he's not really going to go along with this whole charade that's being placed before him. But yes, you can make an argument this is kind of just going into, I would say, probably a overdone trope that has kind of been lost for a while now. I mean, we typically get it every now and then, but the whole child soldier thing, which I think was overplayed for a period of time, and now we're kind of bringing it back, which is not a bad thing in my opinion. I whenever I see child soldier stories, it doesn't bug me. Like 86 didn't bug me, but I do know that some people kind of shrug at it. It is a good story beat if it's kind of executed correctly, which it's sort of doing here, in the idea that limited resources, trying to find somebody that can be a test subject, orphans is your go-to. Now, I will admit that the convenience of this entire ship being broken and veering straight towards the orphanage was a little bit convenient, but the assumption there is that Blue Summers wants that to happen. Blue Summers wants to push him. Again, my assumption at this point is that Blue Summers, at least, is trying to break Nicholas. Blue Summer doesn't like Nicholas. Like, this is this person that made fun of his hair, and his hair is very important. I don't think he would I think he would love nothing more than to break Nicholas and to really frustrate him. Again, I think that's the reason why Livio's there, is because it hasn't outright said it, but it almost feels as if they're implying that Nicholas isn't working to their plans. Is there plans to take out Vash? The assumption is there. As we've seen with the previous episode, they wanted to get rid of Vash. Vash is somebody that has this gate opening, and the option is just destroy it. Rather than have to figure out how to open that gate, just destroy it. The backstory between Livio and Nicholas was pretty decent. It was kind of surprising that they decided to go with a standard 2D animation for that. I typically joke about the fact that whenever you have a CGI anime and suddenly you see a 2D character, it's because that character is not going to be in the scene and the show too long, so they just want to kind of get it out of the way very quickly. They don't want to actually render a full 3D model and have it be expressive and have points of movement and everything kind of established for it, just to be in a single episode. But they technically did show both child version of Nicholas and Livio in a 3D format. So it's kind of odd they decided to do that. I guess it makes sense because of all the other children in the room, but they could have easily just focused the attention on strictly just Nicholas and Livio. But it was a cute little story. Just the new kid in the orphanage and kind of showing them some love. Most likely broken in the idea that he just lost his parents, assuming. Now there's the question to Marcus, how did Nicholas know it was Livio? Did he see him when he was grown up? Or what? The assumption is the eye, because they put a lot of emphasis on Livio when he was younger. His eye was glowing or something like that, and at the point that he kind of calls out Livio, it kind of shows close up on his eye. But yeah, just a super bad cliffhanger. Like, everything's going to crap. Really bad point to leave it on. I'll be curious as to where they kind of go from here, because obviously we have the gangs are climbing up on it. The ship itself is all messed up. They're obviously going towards the orphanage. Nicholas is having to deal with Livio and Vash at the same time. And what is his answer? And that's really what Blue Summer is calling out. And that's, like I said, I think Blue Summer right now is just trying to mess with Nicholas. So will Nicholas just nuke everything? The assumption is that Nicholas wouldn't normally hesitate to just blast all these guys. But now that he's sort of been with Vash for so long, and Vash keeps pounding into his head, you have to kill to survive versus you don't get that choice. Is that enough to really drive Nicholas to not lash out? That's going to be the big question mark. It could just turn to Meryl showing up and Vash and Nicholas flee. But I don't know that Vash would want to leave this huge craft full of civilians that's being attacked by gangs. That would be super cold-blooded. That's not something Vash would want to do unless Nicholas knocks him out and just drags him away. But the assumption right now is that Meryl is captured by the gang. I am still at this point curious what they're going to do with Roberto. My assumption was that he was somebody working behind the scenes. He's going to be a part of some group, like part of Knives' group or something like that. But he actively was trying to get out of the situation. So that sort of leads me to believe that he's not going to be. This is going to be one of those things where if later on Roberto ends up being some sort of bad guy that was working behind the scenes, this scene right here is not going to make any sense because, again, he was walking away from Vash. The fight scenes were really good. I really kind of prefer more these types of fights. The ones where it's just two people of, like, human physique, normal-sized characters just fighting it out, because it's a lot more interesting with the choreography. Just having the characters kind of doing the whole gung fu thing and kind of outsmarting their opponent through not just shooting, but also like some sort of martial arts. But it was super cool, him punching him away, and then you have the cool Vash pose. Anyways, that's my thoughts on episode 6 of Trigun Stampede. I'm sorry, I just realized I'm like all over the place with this particular video. Usually I go through the story beat by beat, but I'm trying to get away from that, actually, honestly. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get all my content. I did news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, we have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel, and y'all take care.